Hey, welcome, folks. And hey, my goodness, we have the super source working. The actual start of the show actually came off for once. Hi, everyone. This is Pete Bickford, and this is the best produced show on the internet by far. Nothing comes close. No. Anyway, welcome to the ComicBase live stream. I'm your humble host. We have our producer in this not in the studio, but at least watching and laughing, hilariously over the Streamlab links. That's Mr. Greg Hecht, and welcome. For the next hour or so, we'll be talking about comic news, but in particular the ComicBase 26.1 big quarterly release, which we have many things to share with you on that one. Some which I hopefully are new to you if we've got it. But anyway, lots and lots of news here. But before we get into it, I do want to say hi to the folks who showed up on here early in the whole thing. Jet City Comics first in the house here. He just apparently just dropped in to say hi, and we'll be watching it later. Agent of Camp here. Robbie William in the house. It's like 22 degrees and sunny in Toledo. Sounds like people are still digging out from the weather. We'll talk about that in a minute. Greg Tex joined us from New Jersey, where apparently everything is encased in a block of ice. Chris Bristol is out there from Philadelphia. Mike Beam from Vancouver, and 56 and sunny. Go figure. But let's see here. What else we got here? Xanadu Comics in Seattle. And so I think we're basically, that's the roll call of people who chimed in. If you guys do have comments during the show, please put them to @ComicBase TV so I can see them. And I will hit any questions or anything as best as I can as we go through things. But anyway, so getting into it here, this is the big ComicBase 26.1 show. Wow. It has been a long road to get to this show, and hopefully we'll make it worth your while. So first of all, before we even get into that, we all made it through Winter Storm Fern. Who knew that winter storms had names? This is all new to me. But apparently I came back from Florida, and about a quarter of the trees on my block had been absolutely exploded. It was either that there was some kind of weird freezing thing that happened with it. More commonly, what happened is the freezing rain attached itself to the branches and just ripped them in half. I mean, it was just absolute devastation down the whole thing. But on the bright side of things, I think we're sending more children of lumbering companies and tree maintenance services. More of their children will make it through college than anything else since the passing of the GI Bill. So you can't help but feel good for the children of tomorrow, and as they're planning their new swimming pools and everything based on all the devastation. Anyway, on the bright side, we did get to see. One thing I did want to say is we were actually had meant to get back a little earlier. I was planning on doing a live stream last week, but we did not get back in time because due to all the freezing rain, it was impossible to actually make it back. What had happened is the major highways would be okay, but all of the roads in between the highway and my house had also turned to skating rinks, and because there's like one snowplow in all of Tennessee, nothing was ready to be driven on, and so basically in the South here, we just cancel everything. So everyone was sitting at home. My daughter had, was not working in her 6 jobs, and was just kind of staying here minding the generators, making sure the servers kept running. But we did good. Unfortunately, most of Nashville was without power. For some of it, I believe, is still. I heard numbers like 50,000 still without power weeks later, which absolutely nuts if that's true. But we did all right. And on the other thing, on the bright side, is we did actually get down to see Orlando's Harry Potter World. I got to see their epic universe. The last time that I went down to see the Harry Potter thing, which, by the way, the short review of this one is the Sidewinder coaster, absolutely awesome. The Frankenstein ride, surprisingly good. I did not get to see the Harry Potter World, which was the entire point of me going down there, because the line to get in was 150 minutes long. To get onto the one ride for the Battle for the Ministry of Magic or something, and it's like okay, they still have these Harry Potter, Hogwarts, and Islands of Adventure, which was fantastic. This was more of an add-on to the whole thing, but that being said, nice park, very very pricey. Good French cafe, kind of in the middle, lots of neat stuff to see. See it once, but you'd probably be a lot happier if you do it as part of like a multi-day kind of thing. Because if you just go for the one day, man, ouch. Anyway, let's see other things that are happening news-wise. Disney is getting a new CEO. Josh D'Amaro, he's the head of the company's theme parks division and consumer products division. What does this mean for the Marvel movies, etc.? No bloody idea. Really don't know. The tenure he had at the theme parks was just okay. Apparently he's going to be the co-CEO with Dana Walden, who is the co-chairman of Disney Entertainment. She leads Disney's entertainment, media, news, and content business. I'm reading past the blah, blah, blah. Basically, it sounds like, well, she got it so Hulu wasn't losing so much money, so that's good, right? The stock market kind of looked at the whole thing and said, whatever. Just kind of shrugged its head, did nothing in particular in the whole thing. I have no idea what it means for the future of anything. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But anyway, that's a thing that happened in the last week. The other thing that happened, and this was kind of like my memorial of it, is the last time I went down to Orlando was right on January 13th of last year. And I was walking around. There's this Disney shopping district. It's not part of the theme parks exactly, but there's a lot of Disney-themed stores, a lot of neat places to eat and stuff like that. And we were walking through some clothing store, my wife, when they were going through. I'm just kind of doing the dude thing, where you're kind of like browsing your phone while your wife tries on a million outfits and things like that. Anyway, and I remember all of a sudden my phone started blowing up because there was news that Diamond Comics had declared bankruptcy. This was January 13th. And so it's like, I know exactly where I was on that day, because then for the next hour or so, my phone just kept blowing up with everyone going, oh, what's this mean? It's strange anniversary for the whole thing. And there's an update on the Diamond story as well right now. So basically, Bleeding Cool News has a big story on the whole thing. I have sort of a summary on the whole thing. Had a sort of a legal analysis done on what it all means, because honestly, it's really hard to follow at this point, a year on. But basically, they've shifted from Chapter 11 to Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which means there's a full liquidation and minimal payouts. They're not trying to restructure the business. They're selling off the parts. And as it turns out, pretty much unless you were a privileged person in terms of getting paid out, you're probably not going to see a dime. Basically, the banks are going to see, okay, the lawyers are getting paid, and you probably aren't if Diamond owed you money. So basically, Ad Populum, Universal Distribution, Diamond UK, etc., they've been consumed by the accumulating legal and bank fees over the past year, leaving little or no recovery from most creditors. The unsecured creditors are likely getting zero. Final amounts show a total of about $78 million in claims, but the, quote, final allowed amount is $0 for unsecured claims, $58.6 million of which, and priority claims, $1.2 million, only secured claims, $4.8 million, administrative expenses, $2.3 million, and 5013B9 claims, which is $11.2 million for goods received shortly before bankruptcy, apparently are the only ones who appear to be positioned for any potential payout. This affects a wide range of parties from major publishers. Penguin Random House is going to be taking it in the neck on this one to the tune of $8.9 million. But even individual employees, Chris Powell, I don't know what he did over at Diamond, but somehow Diamond left owing him almost $12,000. Just I don't know, he didn't get his last paycheck or something. I have no idea. Anyway, the disputed consigned inventory still, it's the last major asset. Not that it was Diamond's to start with, but the ownership battles continued. The stuff that's sticking in their warehouse, which isn't actually theirs, is valued at $47.4 million, retail value of $113.7 million. This inventory is mostly comics, graphic novels, and merchandise owned by the publishers but held by Diamond. It represents the primary remaining value that Diamond is controlling. Diamond has been trying to very aggressively lay claims as, well, no, we should keep it. And that matter is still unresolved, which is probably good. Unfortunately, they got a default judgment against several people, Valiant Comics being one of the major ones, Net Comics, and Digital Manga, because apparently they were given a certain amount of time by the court to file their thing as to why their stuff shouldn't be seized, and they didn't file their papers in time. Apparently just sitting there saying it's not theirs was not a good enough defense. You apparently had to file papers to that effect. And so Diamond got a default judgment against them. So Valiant is going to be taking it in the neck, as well as Net Comics and Digital Manga. As far as everyone else, it remains to be seen. But in the meantime, the more this grinds on, the more nothing there is to spread around, because the only people getting paid really are the banks and the lawyers. Um, One of the interesting aspects of this one, there's internal debts and affiliated owed accounts. Um, as the analysis I'm reading there, it says it highlights self-dealing concerns. Dime reports over $13.8 million due to its own affiliates and related parties, including they owe $7.5 million from Diamond Select Toys, $3.7 million from Diamond International Galleries, and $186,000 from Steve Jeppe personally. And basically, they have intercompany relationships, could complicate recovery, and it's basically Diamond owes it to itself or insiders. And then they're pointing out storage costs, consignment, post-petition accounts, etc., are eating up another basically $3 million out of the whole thing. It's just ugly. The final analysis I'm reading here is filing paints a grim picture for suppliers, employees, and partners reliant on Diamond, the dominant distributor. That's formerly dominant distributor. It could disrupt supply chains and force publishers to seek alternatives, whilst highlighting risks in consignment models, where inventory ownership disputes can lead to total losses if not vigorously defended in court. So yeah, it's grim. Honestly, this sucks. I'm belatedly kind of glad that we stopped doing direct business through Diamond, several years before the bankruptcy proceedings. But this one is unwinding very, very ugly, and that's a year in. We're not quite done yet, but yeah, it's a tragic end to the whole thing. One thing that I will comment on the whole thing, and just to give you a personal color to the whole thing, as I mentioned, the last January 14th, not 13th, I was on my last Orlando trip, walking around Disney Shopping Center, and that's when my phone started blowing up with the whole thing, and all the messages were like, "What does this mean? Are comics going out of business?" Is the whole thing. Now we're a year later, we're all still here, but man, a lot has changed. We wound up switching our business. Prior to this, our business was basically 80%, 75-80% through Diamond. They had lost DC Comics a little while earlier because Diamond had made the decision, which might not entirely have been theirs, to suspend public distribution during the height of the COVID pandemic. Again, I want to say one nice thing for Diamond in this one is that you have to remember they were in Baltimore, Maryland, and the governor of Maryland locked the place down hard. It probably was pretty much impractical to do business during COVID at that point anyway. But when Diamond said, "Yeah, no, we're not shipping product," after a couple months, DC said, "Yeah, you're not our distributor anymore." And so they went off and made separate deals. The one that survived is the one that they made with Lunar Distribution, which, by the way, the books came from Lunar today. I thought Penguin packed books good. My goodness gracious, I got to do a Lunar unboxing at some point just to show you how unbelievably well packed Lunar books are. I mean, like I thought Diamond was trying at the end. They certainly had improved since the early days when if you lost half the shipment to getting it dinged up, it's like them's the breaks, kids. Diamond had actually gotten better toward the end. Penguin, I thought, was setting the absolute gold standard for the way that they're sending everything out there. We get our Penguin books with, for some reason, if they have to ship us 50 books, it'll come in 7 different packages. There's no consolidation of shipping concerns whatsoever, but each individual package is so lovingly protected. You'd think that nothing could happen except it seems like things got damaged at the warehouse before they ever hit the boxes in several cases. Lunar, on the other hand, absolutely pristine. I have nothing but nice things to say about their packaging, excessive to a fault. But anyway, we went from doing all of our business, basically ingesting the Diamond order form, a little bit of Lunar on the back end to handle DC. That changed utterly in the months after January, when suddenly we kept on being able to order through Diamond, and then by about April, Diamond suddenly went and said, "Oh yeah, all that stuff you ordered from us, we won't actually be shipping it." At which point, we had to very, very quickly scramble and find ways to open up a Penguin account, get that loaded into our ordering system so that we could get that data fed to us. There were several months of hiatus where we're just sort of trying to cobble data together as best we can, because the books we had ordered weren't actually going to be showing up. We didn't have a way to ingest order forms from the past. with Penguin, and so it was one of those few times when we were actually in the same boat most collectors are in, where we're all sitting there going like, "Wow, I wonder what shipped this week. We better put it into ComicBase." Whereas usually, we put the stuff into ComicBase months and months and months ahead of when it actually comes out, which is why usually on New Comic Book Day things are usually pretty seamless for all y'all. But if jump in the Wayback Machine to last April or so, things were actually pretty damn chaotic. At this point, we figured it all out. But some of the frustrating aspects of this one are Penguin Random House will only ship, the way that our business is set up ever since my family moved out of California over to Tennessee. Penguin, for reasons known only to them, despite sales tax uses, sales tax and use agreements and everything else, they will only ship to the place where the account can only be where the shipment is going. They can't have the account managed out of Franklin, Tennessee, and be shipping it to a place in California, which is where our indexers are. And so we wound up having to, on the back end, shuffle a lot of duties where it moved a lot of the work that was out in California suddenly had to be out in Tennessee, which did not make me happy at all. And honestly, it did not make the California crew very happy either. At the end of the day, we also, at the end of the year, Mark Castaneda went on paternity leave for a couple of months. And so yours truly over here was scrambling his bloody head off trying to, fill multiple rules for a couple of months. And so, there was a lot of dust in the air, let's just say. But anyway, when it all settled out, we cut one less check to California for payroll. That's the downside. I'm a little more stressed out in terms of my overall workload, and there's more work for the crew out here in Tennessee, which is not it's not my first choice. Mark's still doing okay, but he's still there, much to the chagrin of our payroll person, because one of the things that also happened, just fun inside baseball on California payroll. California took out a COVID loan, like many states did apparently, and they were supposed to pay it back. You'll notice they were giving out money like water during COVID, and what California did is they used it to pay down their egregious state, deficits and things like that, and distribute to the usual folks and stuff like that. God only knows what Minnesota did with theirs. If feeding our future comes to mind. Lots of people had a lot of fun with all the money that was sloshing around during COVID. But notably, California is the one state that apparently didn't pay back a loan. And I think the loan was for some crazy amount, like $120 billion or something that they owed to the feds. And California said, yeah, ain't going to do it. So California, alone amongst states, wound up sending us a notice last year saying, because California actually didn't send us this notice, the feds did, saying, because California didn't pay back the money they owed on the whole thing, we're going to be having a special assessment attached to all your California employees, along with their EDD funds, their Employment Development Division, which is the most Orwellian thing ever. If you want to develop employment, apparently what you do is you tax it. But anyway, we have to pay a special assessment on all of our California employees, which is a percentage of all their pay, which we have to send to the feds on behalf of California, which decided not to pay back the loan. And because this is the only state that did this sort of thing, it can't be done through normal payroll process. So whenever I hear our payroll person, speaking on the subject, her fervent, opinion would be that if we never did business with California again from an employment standpoint, she would be just fine. That being said, we really like Mark, so he's still on the team, and we're very glad for that. But it's just much merriment has ensued with the whole thing. For myself, I personally wound up spending weeks on the code, which imports and manages publishers. We had to rewrite everything that we've been doing from Diamond, repurpose it for Penguin Random House and Lunar, and really ramp up all that stuff. Weeks and weeks of effort went into that, and secondarily, more weeks of work on our corrections processing while Mark was out. I was having to cover on that one. I'm going to say major pain in my butt. But that said, it's kind of nice now, because now that it's done, we can rip through these things much more rapidly than before. We get like these sheets, contain like 1,000 new items a month from each of the different publishers. So it's about 2,000 in all. And it used to be that that'd be the better part of a week of someone's time to get all those incorporated in, and now it's less than half that now. We've actually managed to make the process that much more efficient just from grinding and grinding and grinding and tweaking all the little things to like, okay, how can we determine which, what to call this variant and whatever else. And we put a lot of that business logic to work on the whole thing. Big distraction from anything we want to be doing. That is not what we plan to do that year, but that is what we wound up doing because we had to survive. And now it actually kind of pays off, because now we can get through the onslaught of material that comes down our way and actually kind of survive. So you guys might have seen the newsletter we put out this last week where we had a graph, because I was stunned the last couple of weeks when Mark was out on paternity leave. He's back now, and I'm so very happy. But I'm having to manage the onslaught of corrections that are coming in, and I think we were getting like 7,700 items every single day, not even just the business days, but every single calendar day of the week from the last week where we were doing that graph. Absolutely insane amounts of new material coming our way. So anyway, the good news is, we got on top of it. We managed, and we're stronger on the other side. Bad news, I'm a little frazzled. I been drinking through my Scotch collection pretty good. Some of these nights, but anyway, that said, a lot of coffee, a lot of other things, but yeah, we've gotten through. Anyway, let me show you a couple of interesting graphs, because we got to talk about ComicBase 26.1 now, and let me see if I can pull up some stuff. So let me see here. If I go ahead and pull up the graphs, there we go. All right, so ComicBase 26.1. Let me go and put myself in the shot here for a second. ComicBase 26.1 came out. 26.0 Metropolis came out on basically the 30th of September. So call it October 1st of last year. So just 4 months ago, just barely. And since that time, we have added 43,196 new comics to the database. It's in addition to the ones that we had 4 months ago. We've had 43,000 more. To give you an idea of what that kind of looks like, if you imagine an Overstreet price guide, from like, say, 2005, something like that, 2005, the last time we had any idea how many comics were actually listed in an Overstreet price guide, that was about how many comics we were talking about. It's like we added an Overstreet worth to ComicBase in the last 4 months. Thank you so much to all the people who contribute data to us. We've gotten incredible contributions from all around the world on the whole thing, as well as, of course, dealing with the absolute flood of new material coming in from publishers that we're dealing with. And so our team's been working their butts off. You guys have been absolutely amazing sending us stuff, and thank you so much, everyone. Along with the 43,000 comics we added 785 different books, 12,954 new magazines, 58,293 new newspapers, and we added or updated some 27,094 pictures. That's cover images. And then again, that is just in the last month. We're in the midst of pushing this week's update. It's not. I thought I would do something really clever and try to push it while I was on the line with you guys. But honestly, the connection is not such that it can support me doing that while also running the live stream. So that is going to have to wait. These are the stats from last week's from Sunday's update. So in Sunday alone, 4,610 new items, 37,045 price and issue updates. The new covers added is actually it's a week. So when we push covers, we actually push a rolling 7-day window of them. It's not just the stuff that came out in that exact update. So this is actually over the 7 days around that update. 9,117 new covers for a total of 1,187,259 covers in the archive edition. I don't have anything cool to say about how to make this number explicit, how many miles of road this would lay us down to, or how many Taj Mahals you could wallpaper with this. I've lost count. I no longer have meaningful metrics to talk about numbers this big, but let's just go with it. It's a lot. So that's a thing that happened. So that's the content story. Well, over the last 4 weeks, 4 months since we shipped ComicBase 26.1. Oh, by the way, one very important announcement, and I had to myself. Yeah, I got to it just now. It says important change. So we have been saying for the longest time. Let me go ahead and get my mouse back on the screen. Let me back up the story just slightly. So ever since we started having internet-based updates to the program, and ComicBase 10.0, back in the old days, was the first time that we could give you weekly updates on things. But especially in recent years, what we've done is we've very much made it so that the company is in more or less a constant release cycle. So instead of having one big update or a couple updates a year where we do all our work and then show you our work all at once, usually what we've been doing is we've been kind of keeping two different tracks. There's the track that we show the public, which is okay, well, here we have a new version, like we just said, ComicBase 26.1. That's our big quarterly release for the first quarter, ComicBase 2026. Which is, it's 4 months of us slamming at the program every single day of the week, and doing all of our stuff. And we can talk about all the neat things we've done and all the new work we've done and stuff during that time. We'll be spending the rest of our time on the show doing exactly that. But what we're doing also, if you care to get in on this sort of thing, is we also have the ability to basically have an update that comes out every single time we change code at all. And we call those the interim releases. And you can get those if you want to, just in ComicBase. If you go to Setup, Preferences, and when it says Check for Updates, if you check the box right at the top that says Check for Include Interim Releases, then you can see it's kind of like everything we're doing in between the big ones. Now, that one has been, for the most part, pretty good, because if we're doing something that's really dodgy, basically we'll test it just in-house or amongst just the human computing group or just on Pete's machine or whatever else. We won't put it out even for the in-house testers, not even as an interim release, if we think we're doing something that's a little scary or might break things in a big way. But that being said, if we're going to do a lot of releases, that means that a lot of things will be a little bit okay, this is a little off, that's a little off, and so forth. And so we've basically manage that by having the idea that, okay, for the people who want to get in on the interim release track, you'll always be getting the most recent copy of the program when you check for updates, and it'll probably be okay, but just expect that things might be a little off from time to time, in which case just download the next interim release. Will probably have fixed it. And if you're on part of our internal group, which you can do, you can actually join, by the way, if you want. I'll go ahead and put my email up on the whole thing. If you like watching how the sausage is made, send me a note, Pete Bickford, human-computing.com, and I will add you to the internal Slack group where you actually can see the internal chat amongst the development team of every single thing that we're doing, all the interim releases, people reporting back and forth, say, hey, you got this title wrong, you got to move this picture over there, all the blah, blah, blah about how ComicBase is made on a daily basis. You are welcome to again, we're basically doing our work inside a shop window here, so you can see how it's all done if you care to. If, on the other hand, you just like sitting back and just doing your stuff and living your own life and not getting into all the mess of that thing, by all means, don't feel like you need to. But if this is interesting to you, send me an email and I'm happy to add you to the Slack group. Well, what we've been doing is we've been rolling up all these internal releases about once a quarter into a point release. So if we were at 26.0 was the initial ComicBase Metropolis. 26.1 is all the internal releases for the entire quarter all at once, and you only have to update once and you get it all. And the nice thing is, by then we've had a chance to let things settle out a bit, and we're pretty sure that you're in pretty good shape if you download the new one. We don't expect any real hiccups on the whole thing, and again, less disruption to your own cycle. So if you don't like dealing with futzy little things, which might be, good news is, you get the latest features. Bad news is some things might be a little off. They might not quite work the way you expect yet. If you like having your life be a little bit more stable, do not pick the interim releases thing. Well, in the past, the deal was always this: is if you went to ComicBase registrations, you download the product, you always got the latest interim release. So whatever we had done up until that morning is what you got when you downloaded. One thing that we discovered, because the road to 26.1 was a long and rocky one, and I'm just going to say it's probably the roughest we've had it on the internal side ever doing an internal release. Due to a number of factors, some things that we screwed up, some things where our tools gave out on us, some things where else. But there were a number of things where like, God, if this thing were out in the public, I would not want them downloading this. Enough of those things happened along the line that you saw there were a huge number of the point releases, the 26.0.1, 0.2, 0.3, those things slowly were creeping up over time. We actually got up to like 0.10. Each one of those represents a time when like, oh God, if you'd had the previous one, I'd really wish that you had the one after that one, because something that is likely to actually affect someone happened that was wrong. Usually if it's a bug that's so obscure, it only affects you if you're doing Lithuanian currencies, or you're only working on some obscure computer in the back of Beyond or something, and you're using a feature that almost no one uses. Those things I don't get too worried about. But if it's something like, God, if like there was one where if you were exporting a custom or an issue checklist with custom fields, there was actually a bug in the reporting engine software that we were using, which would cause that to fail. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, a lot of those things crept up during the release, and it was enough to make it so for the first time ever, we've actually truly isolated the interim and the release tracks. So it is actually, and this is actually worth noting because I gave it a big lead up to probably obscure the entire meaning of what I meant to say here. But if you are looking for interim releases and you check that box under preferences and say include interim releases, you're always going to get the very latest build just like before. If you don't have that checked, you will only, even if you will only get the latest stable build. So 26.1.0. You won't be getting any of the other things like that until there's a 26.2. You'll only ever see that one. Furthermore, when you go to download the software from your registrations, the only thing it's going to show you on the main page of the downloads is the latest official stable release. If you want to get the latest, absolutely current, the thing that we're working on just like yesterday release, you have to click on the additional downloads, tab at the top of the page and look for the one labeled 26.1.1 parenthesis current build, whatever else. That's the latest interim build. So you do have to go to another place to get that. We did make it slightly inconvenient. There's an extra tab you got to click on to get to it that way. You still more or less control the update by saying, hey, do I like interim builds or do I not? If you don't like interim builds, just uncheck interim builds. You'll only be bothered with the big stuff. If you like interim builds, just keep the thing checked and it works the same as ever. But that is a fundamental change. One thing we did with that also, though, is along with having two different tracks on the whole thing, we made it so the release notes that come with the builds make a little bit more sense. So we figured, okay, we're not just shipping one installer to everybody here, which always left us with this weird problem with, okay, if I know that this interim installer is going to get downloaded by just a random guy who just bought ComicBase yesterday, or it might be, downloaded by the guy who's, holding on to every beta change that we do and really wants to know what's new about this particular build. We always had to kind of split the baby on this one, where we would tell you about the big stuff that happened when a big change came up, but then bit by bit, we would kind of replace it, in between major versions of the program. We would start leaking out on the interim page. We would talk about the little futzy things we were doing. Now we actually have those two tracks completely separated. So if you're on the interim page, you will actually see right when you download, it'll say like, all right, we changed this, we changed that, we changed all the little futzy stuff. And if you're downloading only the major stuff, you will see only the major only the major features in the program. So it does make sense. It's a bit more complicated from a staging issue for us, but it's nothing that you need to worry about. It hopefully just adds to a more stable experience for all y'all. Because even though there are a lot of folks out there who really like seeing, how the sausage is made, a lot of other people have lives, and you're trying to not have your life disturbed too much by all the ruckus as we're banging about and wrecking things, and so we're trying to not, not wreck the view for you guys either. So that's a thing that we're doing, and we'll take it from there. So I've been yamming for quite a while. So let me hit the chat here for a second. Doop 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 doop. So let me see here. Good grief. Okay, I've really been yapping for a while. Well, okay, so the folks from Roseville have checked in. Um, yes. Greg Heck says names for winter storms entirely an invention of the Weather Channel. Yeah, it's funny because it caught on for Fern. Again, the first one I ever heard of, because all the papers were reporting out and everything. Because it sounded like it blew the southeast of the country just absolutely apart. Who needs some chains on their tires? Just strap on some ice skates from the local ring. Yeah, I like how, by the way, I do actually, because I grew up in California, and you are frequently, if you want to go places, you travel through the mountains. I actually owned a set of tire chains, which have been sitting in a bag in my garage for the 9 years I've been out in Tennessee. Absolutely useless. I, of course, brought them with me when I went down to Florida, because I knew that, coming back, things might be a little tricky, and just in case. But in the meantime, my daughter, who was stuck and literally couldn't get into work because people were sliding down the driveways trying to get anywhere, was like, "Oh, Dad, do you have those chains?" It's like, "Yeah, sure I do. They're in my trunk in 55-degree Florida." Florida, by the way, absolutely abandoned, because in 55-degree weather, you could go out to an outdoor mall and they were all like, "This is the Arctic. This is not supposed to happen." And so the whole place was shut down. Anyway, let's see here. Agent Caps, anyone else getting odd noises in the audio? Don't know. Nope, still there. Are the odd noises kind of a chittering? Because I get that mostly because I'm blowing out the headphone amp on my thing. I've always been that way. But if it's new to you guys, let me know and I'll see what I can do about it. Brian Price says, Tomorrow says a GoFundMe to help cover the costs of their stuff that Diamond has of theirs. And Greg says, the suspicion is that the publishers that lost their inventory via default judgment because they couldn't afford legal representation, or the value of the merch wasn't worth the legal costs. Yeah, it's my general advice to anyone who's considering getting involved in a civil lawsuit is really try not to. Nothing will suck up your life more in terms of just ripping it out of you, and you rarely, even if you get a judgment in your favor, I know very few people who walked away with having even won feeling like they hadn't kind of lost. So yeah, if you can walk away, typically that's the way to go. Let's see. This is, yes, chittering noise in the background sounded a bit like an old dot matrix printer somewhere. I'm going to actually turn down the gain on my mic. Let's see if that helps somewhat. I'm actually... No, it's not doing a damn thing. Hold on a second. All right, let me try one other thing and see if that helps. Sorry about that, guys. ATEM. All right, give me just a second. I'm going to pound the audio interface. Nope. And I got a no. I'm getting a no from Greg. Worse, he says. Sweet. All right. Let me try one last thing. Let me go to the ATEM control panel here. Audio. And all right. We're turning camera off, camera off. That's off, that's off. That's off. Mic 1. Okay. All right, folks out there in audio land. All right, this is improved. Okay, so are my levels high enough that you can still hear me? I'm getting can still hear it, but fainter, but can you still hear me? All right, so we got I can still hear me, so we're going to keep working with it. All right. All right, so we'll continue to play with this. One of the reasons I'm debating with myself as to whether to go to the NAB show this year over in Vegas, National Association of Broadcasters, is to look at podcasting equipment. The reason you get that kind of interference is because I'm sitting there, I'm doing the show in front of 17 tons worth of computer equipment, which is exactly the kind of thing which is made to induce interference in a analog audio signal. And the one thing that my interface does not have here is what's called a balanced input. And so it loves having its audio signal interfered with by electronics nearby, which that's all I have is right now is electronics nearby. So doing what I can. Hopefully it's a little bit better, but all right, we'll move on from that, and hopefully we'll take it from there. Okay, so going back to the chat here. Let's see here. Okay, so Age of Camp says, I wonder if anyone's trying to go after Jeppy's comic museum, collection/museum. I don't think you can. It's the whole point of having a corporation is because it gives you a shield on these things. Matter of fact, Steve Jeppy had multiple corporations that he used for the whole thing, each of which, unless you can pierce the shield by essentially claiming fraud, which I don't think there was. I think it just didn't work out. I don't think anyone's making a fraud allegation at the moment in terms of the overall structure or running of the business, at least not that I've heard of. And it would surprise me greatly if he was involved in anything like that. But basically, the businesses will live or die on their own, and it doesn't take the personal wealth with them. So, in other words, if the galleries run as its own business, it can go under. It can make a lot of money. But if, say, Diamond Select Toys goes under, it doesn't get that to take the gallery's money and so forth. Let's see here. It says DCBS packs very well soon. Let's see. All right. Let's comments about packing. Brian Stewart, apparently not that. Greg saying not many publishers have gone out of business because of Diamond, unless they already had serious problems to begin with. Yeah, I gotta say though, if you owed me $9 million, it would really wreck my day. So Eddie Bear from Chicago, from Kansas City, check in. Hey, welcome. All right, let me see here. Yes, Brian says, I'm not saying I've indexed a bunch of series that did not have a valid country code or currency on purpose just to make Pete drink more scotch, but now that I know that, better stock up. Yeah, some of the things that were actually such minor notes in the new version that they didn't make anything but the interim release notes or things like, yeah, we've added country codes for the old Yugoslavia, a country that I believe has not existed since 1996 or so, as well as something like 4 or 6 currencies of various periods of hyperinflation that they used to have, because our indexers, Brian amongst them, were saying, well, hey, I want to be faithful to the source material. This thing was delineated in Yugoslav dinars pre-hyperinflation reset number 1. The next batch was in YUMs, which is the one that was like the transitional one that was briefly pegged to the euro or something. Absolutely insane. All the little things that you have to deal with just to cope with comic history. But yes, we do that sort of thing. All right. Dr. Pete says, congrats. All right. So Tyler T joining us. Brian Steers says, someday it's very interesting to watch and test the new sausage. We try to find obscure things to fix. Absolutely. Oh, yes. And he says danger mode is now much less problematic now. Yes. Brian Stewart was one of the guys who was behind the introduction of something we politely call danger mode, which was basically the ability to copy and paste willy-nilly into the grid across multiple categories all at once, which actually, we started doing that feature a bit ago, and it actually works really freaking slick now. All right, so let's get on to, I think we've done enough, laying out the groundwork here. Let's get around to showing some stuff, shall we? All right, so let me go ahead and fire up my demo screen over here. Let me switch back to the demo PC. All right, here we have ComicBase 26.1. And by the way, to get it, as mentioned before, all you got to do really is just go to ComicBase, your copy of ComicBase, go internet, say check for updates, and download the whole thing. If your subscription is current, you will see it, and you'll be able to go from there. All right, I'm going to take myself out of the mix right now and just show you a couple of cool new things. So, all right, first thing you'll want to do is go up here under Setup, go to your Preferences, and this is where you would check for whether or not you want to include your interim updates or not. And I would suggest, by the way, having it check for updates each time a database is open. It takes quarter of a second. Nothing, no harm being done, but you may as well at least know when new things are happening. It certainly is good. But one thing I do want to direct you to is this box down here in the bottom right-hand corner, which let me turn on the magnifier so you can actually see it. Okay. So if you look down here at the bottom right-hand corner, it says use Smart Fill in Grid. Now, by default, this is not turned on because honestly, we figured we'd have to explain it too much to people. And so, well, we'll let you turn it on if you know what you're doing. And if you don't, we just don't want to surprise you in a bad way. So we left it turned off. But I would absolutely suggest turn this sucker on because it's freaking cool. Let me show you how it works. All right, let's go to a title that has a whole bunch of variants in it. Like, I don't know, let's first I'm thinking of like Evangeline. Okay, yeah, we got a few. Okay, so, all right, you guys know us down for Evangeline from 1996. Yeah, there's a number 1, a number 1 ace, number 1A, number 1B, number 1C, etc. This is, at this point, just a standard comic book in today's life. But let's fill out some data for this one, shall we? Like, let's say, and I'm just going to make up stuff right now. Let's say the storyline. I'm going to say this is, to the death, right? Now, if I hit tab right now, I'd be filling this out for Evangeline Volume 2, Number 1, right? But I have Smart Fill turned on. So now when I tab out of this one, it knows, well, if the storyline on number 1 was to the death, well, then the storyline on the Ace edition, the A edition, the B edition, the C edition is also going to be that. Same thing goes for things like the colorist, like Dan Shadian in Extreme Colors did the color on this one. Well, if I paste the same thing here, it knew that I may as well fill it in there. John Stinsman was the cover artist. That was for the A edition. Now, if I click on him, nothing happens. Why? Because what separates these editions from each other? It tends to be the covers. So we leave those ones out of it. Those ones are not affected by a Smart Fill because they're exactly the thing that tends to make it, of what the variants are. But let's say the editor, on the other hand, I literally, all I have to do is double click on Matt Hawkins here, tab out, and it knows, oh yeah, hey, he must have been the editor on the other ones as well, because it doesn't make sense. The interior pages are the same. Same thing goes for the inker, Marlo Akiza, Kurt Hathaway, the letterer, etc. And instantly, you can fill out so much stuff, so quickly, using this feature that it takes a ton of the work out of the whole thing. By the way, actually, let me show you one other trick in here, because another thing we introduced with ComicBase 26.1 is we call it Psychic Typing 3.0. Let me find some more stuff here. Well, we kind of burned out eventually. Let's go to another series and put some new stuff in here. Okay, here's a good one. All right, so here Evangeline Volume 3. It's like nothing but variants. All right, so here we go. All right, here's Evangeline Volume 3. And the 90s, man, don't you love those? All right, so once again, let's go. Storyline is to the death again. All right, tab on that one. Of course, it knows to fill in the full thing. All right, now let's make up some stuff, right? Now, Joelle Jones is not known as a colorist, but she has the advantage of being someone who has one of those names with characters in it that are really hard to type. Typically you'd have to go and get out the character map and look up where the umlauts go and things like that. Well, I'm going to start just typing her name. Actually, I'm going to make her the artist on this one. Sorry, Dan, I'm blowing you away, man. All right. By the way, psychic typing only applies to blank fields. So when I sit there and I say Joelle Jones, right, and I tab out of the whole thing, some magic happened here. So number 1 is, I typed in Joel. I didn't type in J-O-E with umlauts over the top of it, L. It knew that Joelle Jones, or Joelle Jones, is the most common use of her name. This is actually the official name for Joelle Jones. And so I could actually type it using good old-fashioned English type characters, and it would get the right one. It would just automatically map it. Notice also that it only replaces things that are blank beforehand. It does not attempt to replace ones that were filled in with something else. So Smart Fill only applies to blank stuff. That's important. But the other thing you can do here is, let's say it's been Joel Jones and let's say George Perez did a co-host on this one. So watch it how I can type this one in. Let's just start from the top. So I type Joel. All right, Joel Jones, comma, George Perez. And all I need to type is George. And I hit tab out of this one, and it knew enough to put in, the umlauts over the E, the accent over Perez, and so forth. It also knew not to blow away the ones that were different because they already had data in them. Let's say I were to clear them out, on the other hand, if I even so much as double-click just to get into edit mode and tab out, then suddenly the blank ones will get smart filled in exactly the way you want. So it gets rid of so much needing to go and look up characters. It makes sure that your stuff gets standardized according to the official names of people. It takes so much of the work out of entering data. It is crazy. I actually got the lunar shipment in for this week, and we had I don't know, it was like 35 books or something like that just for the week, including, compendiums and annuals, multiple stories, all sorts of them, things like that, with half a dozen writers and artists and so forth in every issue. So a lot, what would normally be a lot of typing. And honestly, I got through the entire thing, scanning, typing, entering the whole thing else, 54 minutes, and I was having my coffee. This is just night and day as far as how much it speeds you up if you have to do any of this sort of data entry. So that's the Smart Fill. As addition to the Psychic Typing. Psychic Typing 3.0, we call it that one because it knows enough to go back, and even if I typed a non-diacriticalized character, if it knows the official name of that one has the diacritical, it will swap it in for you automatically. Now, let's say I want to go and I want to make a very specific change to a particular letter. Say, no, this is Joel's brother who does not have an E over the name. You actually can type just the regular E, and it will leave it alone. So if you do need to do character by character edits like that, you can still do them. You're in full control of the whole thing, but it's a massive accelerant for you if you're just typing along. You basically gets rid of the need to go ahead and look up all these kind of special characters on the whole thing. All right, other things that are new in the new version. We've gone in when you're looking at the way when you edit title information. Let's go ahead and zoom this down a little bit here so you can see it. If I'm entering a brand new title and I give it a name I don't know, Star Wars, the Great Escape or something like that. All right, you'll notice that same way, I just typed -- the Great Escape, it went and automatically turned that into an M hyphen. It will also do things like automatically curving my quotes, automatically doing replacing foot and inch marks with smart quotes with the whole thing. If I type ... it'll change it to a proper ellipsis character and so forth. And hey, wouldn't it be great if I'd actually done this on screen? Let's try this now with the thing on the right screen. So here we go. I'm going to change this to Star Wars, The Great Escape. All right, so there we go. And so here we are, now visible on screen as opposed to just on my monitor. But yes, it automatically goes and replaces the proper upper ASCII characters, that are typographically correct for all these things are really, really hard to type otherwise. It takes a lot of the work out of the whole thing, and it does help really standardize things out so that, you guys don't need to worry about, digging through all these other alternate utilities for finding special characters nearly as much as you would have to in the past. One thing I will give you, though, is a hint, is if you guys ever find yourself needing to type characters that are not common on US keyboards, such as George Perez with an accent over the E. That would send most normal people, scurrying for the character map control panel if they cared, or just typing George Perez, and hoping, he doesn't take offense, if not. But if we care about getting those things right, one thing that's amazingly handy to have is it's a feature of Microsoft Power Toys. It's a little utility that's included with it was a bunch of the developers over at Microsoft who were just like, yeah, we wish we could have slipped this into Windows, but they wouldn't let us. So they just did their own Skunkworks project and put it out with all the sorts of features that they wished Windows had, and they put it out as a separate free utility. There's a link to it in the show notes. Feel free to go ahead and download that. But one thing it lets you do is, if I'm typing some character like, I don't know, like George Gutman, and I want to put the the umlaut over the U in Gutman. If I type George G.U. and I just with the U down, if I then hit space right there, it'll actually show me a line right across the top of the screen with all the possible accented type characters, the diacriticalized versions of that letter that it could have had. So whether it's a U with an accent, a U with an umlaut over it, if you're talking about Norwegian characters, the O with the slash through it. I don't even know what it's called, but it gives you instant access to those things, and without having to go, fiddling around in a separate utility looking for them. Very, very handy to have. Do look down the show notes for that one, but it's called Microsoft Power Toys, and have a look at that. It also has a bunch of other neat utilities for doing things like zoom ins and splitting your screen different ways, and just a bunch of different stuff. I mean, it's so much stuff. I'll admit I have not had a chance to play with all the stuff that's in it as much as I would like, but it's definitely worth looking at. All right, so let me see what's going on here. Yeah. Pete happened for a while? Nah, it doesn't happen. All right, so you see here. I think Mike went fixed it. Okay, and Dr. Pete says we flipped off the audio interface. It went away. So, okay, so it sounds better. Is what I'm mostly hearing. Okay. Let's see. Absolute Batman, Walking Dead #1. The Walking Dead #1 has 253 variants. That's a great test. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I'd seen that a little before. Otherwise, I would have done that. Okay, and all right, so back to that one. I think we've got it now. All right, so other things that are new in the new version. Let me look at my notes because I got a bit far on a tangent. So we talked about, let me talk about this one. So one of the things we did in, I forget what, I'll admit, there was a reason we did this that had nothing to do with why we did it in the end. I think it has something to do with the faster searching. There was some search that we really wanted to speed up, but we figured out in order to do it, we had to add a different kind of index to the table. And it was just one of those times when I was just frustrated enough with the process that I said, this is nuts. We have 17 kinds of indexes along the database tables and the whole thing. And you're telling me I need one more to make this thing work performantly. It's like, screw you. And I spent a lot of time. It just became one of those things that you're up till 2 a.m. just really pounding on. And it basically came down to, I went and I analyzed all the searches that hit the table through anything that we do in the entire program. And I figured out what are all the indexes that actually matter. So what the hell's an index, Bickford? All right. So a database is just a big storage file full of data, right? So think of it as like the pages in a book, right? Well, if I want to find out where's the part in Les Miserables where, Jean Valjean steals the bread, I don't want to have to start at page 1 and keep reading until I see it. What would be really neat is if there was a place where I could, look at the back of it and says steals bread. Oh, that's page 143, and just go straight to page 143. Well, same thing goes on. We say things like, hey, I want to find all the comic books that are from Great Britain, or I want to find all the comic books that were updated this week, or I want to find all the comic books that I've got that are near mint condition, or things like that. You don't want to have to read through the entire database every single time you're looking for anything. You'd like to have something which pointed you just right the information you want, because then you just page over to that, the index, and jump straight to the data you want. So the trick on that one is you don't want to have the index be 17 times larger than the book itself. Same thing, you don't want to have so many indexes in the whole thing that it eclipses the size of the database. Well, so there's a balancing act with the whole thing. If I knew a list of all the conditions, I knew a list of all the artists, I knew a list of all the publishers, how could I put that together in a way that gets me all the other things I want, for instance? Well, anyway, we took a really, really hard look at all the indexing along some of the tables that we were using, and we made some tough decisions. And when we did, this was right on my ComicBase 26.0.5 or so, if you guys saw that one. And we found out that we could get rid of about half the indexes we were using and increase the performance at the same time, or at least keep it the same. And so we're like, all right then. I remember what it was. We need to change the typing of some of our fields to be a little bit more precise in terms of decimals. We didn't want to have a whole bunch of floating point rounding nonsense in the data structure. So that's what actually drove this whole thing. But anyway, So because we had to go and reset the tables, we thought, well, let's fix the indexes while we're at it. And so we did that. And as a result, we managed to actually clip something like 300 megs off of the base database size. If all you've got is comic books, books and magazines, it's about, we went from about 1.2 megs to about 900 megs in standard size as far as the basic database. And if you have newspapers, you saved even more. But yeah, it was like a good, like a really good shrink of the database size. And because we shrunk the database size, that also means we shrunk the size of your backups. We made it so that now, when you go to transmit them up to the servers, they take about 16% less time and so forth. So it was like a nice little win. The only thing you pay for when you do that is once on the journey, and most of you people who are listening to this right now have already done this part. At some point when you're going from ComicBase 26.0 to 26.1, it'll say like, give me a minute here, I need to move some tables around. And you kind of twiddle your thumbs for a minute or two, and this is, okay, I'm done now. And at that point, then you'll notice that all your stuff just takes less space. So that was like a pretty good win for us. So yeah, that's a thing. Other things we've done, we've added apparent grades. So yeah, bear with me, children. I'm going to take you back to the days before we had slabs. Oh, God. Kids, once upon a time, comic books were really cool. What you could do is you could take them out, read them, and put them away and put them in like Mylar or plastic bags. And if you wanted to read again, you could take it out again and read it again, even if the comic was really, really old. Well, one thing that people notice, though, is the really old comic books tend to be in not that great a shape compared to the brand new ones. And, it's not, not for this or that. But what some people decide to do is, they said, gosh, the only problem with this comic book here is it has this color chip over there. And if I could just get someone to artfully color that in, then it would look so much better. Or if I could have them fold this one piece back there or replace this one chip or do something like that. There are little things you could do to what they call restore the comic book back, which would make it look much, much nicer than it did before it had been done. Well, but this is a bit, in collectibles, restoration it's we understand that you need to do it for a 700-year-old painting. No one really thinks twice about it. It's not like there's a second copy of the Mona Lisa that hasn't been restored, which you can say like, well, I've got the unrestored version of the Mona Lisa. Yours is just like a cheap restored copy. No, I mean, with comic books, there were many, many copies. So there's a little bit of a bias against the ones that, you'd prefer, most people would, the one that had always been looking beautiful as opposed to the one that was brought back and made to look beautiful by the use of different techniques, adding things to it and so forth. Pressing does not count as restoration because you didn't add or remove anything from the book itself. But any kind of restoration work was considered a bit of a defect, but let's face it, it was still kind of nice to have. So what people did back in the day is you would have the idea of an apparent grade, which is to say, all right, look, before this thing had work done to it, it looked like a VG, right? Very good. But because it had some work done on it, we checked, touched up some color samples, we might have replaced a staple or two, stuff like that. Now it's apparent fine minus, or it's apparent V, very fine. They did a really great job. But you have to say it's an apparent that, because it means that we had work done. I'm being honest about the fact it had some work done. I'm not lying to you. I'm saying it looks really nice now, but yeah, it had some work done, right? If I was a jerk, I would just say, oh yeah, it's a very fine minus, look at that. Wow, isn't that wonderful? And I would never admit that I had work done, and that would make me a fraudster. So the way we kept honest back in the day is you would declare these things as apparent this grade versus the grade that it officially would be without the work. So you're recognizing it looks better than the unrestored version, but you're still copying the fact that it had work done. Now, in the days of slabs, right, at that point they mark it as restored this grade, that grade, and so forth, but then they lock it inside a CGC slab and you can never read the book again. What about all you people who actually still like reading your comic books, treating them like something other than large oversized trading cards? The way that you would, again, be honest about the fact that you've done work with the whole thing is you'd mark it as apparent this, that, and the other thing. We've now added apparent grades to ComicBase so that if you're one of those few, the proud, the noble souls who want to keep their comic books as comic books, not send them in to have them slabbed, not have to mark them as a CGC restored grade because it was never CGC'd, it never left your possession, but you still want to be honest about the grade of the whole thing. Now you have a way to do it. And so If you look under the grading sets in ComicBase, you go to setup and then conditions, you'll see if there are now listings for apparent grades. Let me see if I can show that to you real quickly. By the way, if you guys aren't familiar with them, you guys may not know that there are just ridiculous numbers of grades that we have in the ComicBase world. So if we look down at setup and we go to grading, all right, so this isn't too bad of a list. So here's the CGC books and the restored grades and so forth, and here's your classic grades at the top, right? The fines, the near mints, and stuff like that. But CGC is not the only game in town, far from it, and you may not do any work with CGC. So why would we want to make it so we clutter all your list with all the grades that could ever be done from all the different people who ever do anything else? No, what we do is we have this idea of grading sets, where you can say, what grades do I use in my particular database, and I can say whether I want to include them in the database or not. So you can choose which grading companies you deal with, which collectibles you deal with, and whether or not you want to include apparent grades. And that's one right under here is if you check off that I want to include apparent grades for comic books, you'll suddenly see that grades they typically start with A will appear as like AVF, apparent VF, and it will show in the group is that will suddenly appear in your list when you're looking down things. But if you don't use apparent grades, if you don't do restoration, don't check it, and it'll keep your list nice and clean. You can, on the other hand, if you use grading companies like CBCS, PGX, PSA, etc., add as many as you want, remove any you don't use, and it will keep your list nice and clean. So that's the thing that we do in ComicBase these days. All right. Other things, so we talked about the automatic smart quotes. Other things, this might be a little bit on the obscure side. We replaced, let me go ahead and move my camera over here. We replaced our old library for handling data interchange to and from the servers. It was a thing called Newtonsoft, which is perfectly fine. It worked good, but we managed to use native routines for this stuff now. Had to convert a lot of stuff around in the whole thing. Briefly broke a bunch of stuff, I will admit, in strange and weird ways because of the different libraries handling things differently. But being on the other side of it now, it's now working nice and well, and it makes all the internet calls in the program significantly faster. Other things happening, the installer file, because of the changes we made to the databases, including the stock database, and also relocating where some of the resources are kept, is now about 20% smaller. So program updates, if you're downloading ComicBase 26.1, it's smaller than it would have been before. If you were using ComicBase Free, the demo version of ComicBase, I mean, how awesome are we as a company here? We charge you nothing. And the ComicBase Free can now download program updates from within the program, as well as do all the usual things that you could mostly do with ComicBase Express for collections up to 500, and it's gratis. Honestly, this is 500 is pretty much the collection size that we consider to be like enough to have a problem. Our personal thought is that if you don't have 500 comic books, gathering, cluttering up your life, you probably aren't the kind of person who's going to spend any money at all to manage them. So let's just put it out there as a social good in the world, and you can look up pricing and do things like that. But yes, ComicBase Free can now download program updates from within the program. All right, so we this was actually the thing that goofed us up worse than anything on the road to 26.1. I got a call one day from a guy who got ComicBase to do something that I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles was impossible. He got ComicBase to throw out data. And the way he did it was amazing, because he basically he tripped over a bug in the Microsoft Grid component we use. Basically, what he had done is he had clicked at the top of the grid and had it sort by the quantity in stock. And as he was going down his list, he was going and flipping them from 0 to 1. But because it was also being sorted at the same moment by that quantity in stock, there's this really, really complicated system of events that happens as you're editing that grid, moving between cells and double clicking and setting cursors and entering fields and leaving fields and doing things like that, where we basically, the short version is when you make a change to a cell, we write it to the database. That's the short version. The long, very complex version is, well, we know that you've left editing mode on things when a number of different things happen, whether or not you double click to set the cursor, whether or not you've activated the next field, whether you, there's all sorts of interaction between all these little futsy things right next to it. One thing that was doing this guy in is that there's a thing called a sort event, which he had chosen to sort by something which was not the normal thing. It was not running the grid in issue order. He was sorting it by the exact thing that he was changing. And the sorting event to flip it to be sorted someplace else was hitting a microsecond before the thing that told us he's done hit. And so by the time we said, yeah, go ahead and write this thing down to the database, it was talking about the wrong cell because it flipped around to someplace else. And so when you went to the next cell, next page, and you came back to it, it's like, wait, where'd my changes go? They just went away because we didn't have hold of where, he was changing the thing that was marking its position as he was doing it. So we thought, wow, this blew our minds. We could not believe that this was possible. 30 years of doing ComicBase, we've never seen it throw away data like this in the most extreme circumstance. So we're like, okay, well, we better find a way to make sure this never happens again. And we really went to town on it. We're watching all the interaction between all these events. We're storing out where you're going before you go, before the sorting event gets to it. We're doing all this elaborate stuff to do it. But because we now had to insert ourselves very deeply into the chain of events as it's going, it gave us a lot of chance to screw up lots of little weird interactions between cells that we had no idea were ever happening. So if there were times over the last couple builds, the 26.0.6 through about 26.0.9 builds, where you would do a thing and it would, you'd check a checkbox or something like that, and it wouldn't remember it depending on whether you clicked on something or entered something or returned or done something like that beforehand. Our apologies to you. We're very sorry about this. We did eventually find them all, but my God, this thing was a pain in the tuchus. It is actually the thing that shook us so hard that we couldn't believe we'd caused such a problem in trying to fix one guy's obscure problem that had never come up in 30 years, that we actually wound up introducing subtle and infrequent, but much more common to happen problems. We actually wound up inflicting them on a much wider base of our user base. So that's why you saw that over the time, we did a lot more forcing of incremental updates as we locked down all the possible cores to this one. At this point, it's working like a champ. It's good. Everything's great now. But man, that thing was a pain in the tuchus. But the other thing it did is it convinced us that, yeah, it is possible for us to get into trouble like this with things that we do that are not immediately fixable and not know that we've introduced some subtle interaction like this. So that's why we're going to switch to having completely isolated build tracks and interim build tracks and full-on for the normies release tracks. We decided that is something that we're not gonna play with this thing where like the latest time you download always has the latest interim build. No, the latest time you download by default has the latest release build. Yeah. So our apologies on that one. It was a pain. But it's done now, and it's all good. So hopefully we're all good now. That's how I think probably the biggest bug that happened during the course of the journey from 26 to 26.1 that drove us nuts was that crazy grid stuff. And there were related things involving copying and pasting and edit controls around checkboxes and things like that. They're all of a part. With our interactions having to get very, very, very involved overriding behaviors of the Microsoft grid. But like I say, it's we feel like we had our hand on the stove there for a bit, and we feel like we learned our lesson. All right, let's see here. Let me see. Is Andre still? Questions. Is Andre still updating the covers? We think he is, but I haven't heard from him in a while. He might have some stuff going on in life. I reach out to him at one point, but I have not been able to make contact. Let's see here. Some love for Power Toys on the chats. We're going to go with that one. And I'm also going to mention that the PSAs, of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe on the live stream if this is the sort of thing you guys like. We are the one software company that I can think of that is dumb enough to actually show you everything that we're doing as we're doing it. It reminds me a bit of the ill-advised idea that what was it? No, it wasn't Heinlein. Harlan Ellison launchpad of yeah, when you're right, you're always writing in your own head. And I believe he even did this. Is he did a thing where he just basically sat in a showroom case and had his typewriter and just wrote whatever he was working on at the time, just to make a bit of a performance about the idea of typing, which you, I don't know what that is, but we actually do something like that with computer coding here, which is the most inadvisable thing on the planet. Every PR person worth their salt would be telling us, for God's sake, Bickford, shut the hell up. This is not helping. But honestly, I do think it is somewhat useful or interesting to know how the sausage is made. And honestly, that it does require enormous amounts of work, that there is an incredible amount of fussiness over details. And so if at some point you find yourself getting pissed off with us because, yeah, well, hey, over here you say Arthur Adams, and over here you said Art Adams. What kind of idiots are you guys? Don't you put any attention to this whole thing at all? Yes, we really do. And this is the kind of thing that we sweat day in, day out. And I think probably it does some good to let people see us sweat the details. As long as at the end of the day, what you're using feels pretty polished. So I hopefully we're there. So we'll see. All right, but please do hit that like and subscribe button, because again, if this is the sort of thing that you like seeing, it's the sort of thing we do. There is a ComicBase message forum board at forums.comicbase.com. Do check that out. We do watch that, and just as importantly, other really smart ComicBase users will watch that one. So it's likely that even if you're catching me at 3 in.the morning after I've finally gotten some sleep after putzing with something all night long, that there's a good chance that someone else can answer your question before we even see it. So that's a very useful thing. The signal to noise ratio on the ComicBase forums is amazingly good. So very happy about that. And by the way, thank you all the moderators who make sure that it keeps really good. Let's see here. Some love from Power Toys from Brian Stewart. Also the link for Andre's ComicBase catalog, cover catalog. If you want to see what 1.8 million comic books look printed out, that is a thing that we've got. And Andre, let's see how you're doing, man. I hope you're still in the game. We haven't heard from you in a while, but please check in. All right, let's see here. And some other questions about how Andre's doing. Let's see here. Let's see. Time for ComicBase After Dark now, or is that 0.1 out? Yes, possibly. And all right, we'll see. All right, so I think that will do it for now. Oh, I'm sorry. The other big news is we finally got the new version of the mobile app out for iOS. Thank God Almighty. Thank free at last. Yeah, so if you are using iOS, make sure you've got the brand new ComicBase 26.0.4. Some kind of insane dark magic was done with the build that we sent for 2603, where it was working when we sent it to them, and by the time we got it, what they sent back was not. That was pretty special. But 2604 is working just fine. We will be seeing a lot more from on the mobile front in the future, but in the meantime, we're actually going to be trying out some new things in some areas that we've not given nearly enough attention to lately, but we'll talk more about that on the next one. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Do grab the new version, ComicBase 26.1. Just go internet check for updates. If you have let your subscription get away from you, go ahead and make sure you say renew, subscribe, and update that one, because we've got a lot of cool new stuff in there, and we think you will very much dig it. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.